listen, before we get too deep into this podcast or get into any of the questions that came in, I do want to address something, and that is the very, very hot topic of Gareth Bale. The last 48 hours have been very much Gareth Bale, and there's been a tornado surrounding him. And which is kind of weird because in a lot of ways he's not a relevant figure this season, and you almost sometimes forget he's in the squad. But in the last 48 hours, it's almost as if like we've made up for his absence in the media. It all starts with obviously the fact that he was initially going to be in the Classico squad. He was training with the team, and then he pulls out with a back issue, and he doesn't play in the Classico. Ancelotti says later that Bale says he couldn't have played, and I had to listen to him. And lo and behold, he seems like he's ready to go for, let's be honest, some of the most important games in Welsh national team history. Puts the team on his back, scores 2 goals, 2 vintage Bale goals, by the way, and an incredible carry job and 2 epic moments of brilliance. And that's even besides the point. This is also all in the back of the whole... Just forgive me for being so blunt, because I actually have friends who work there, but just absolutely trash journalism from Marca. And I know the people I know who work there don't fall in this category, and they know I'm not talking about them. But certainly there's always a standard of journalism that I've always been passionate about holding ourselves to, and I think what was written about him, everything from the headline to the image portraying him, the cartoon, and the scathing attack on his character, which was unfounded and completely off base, and it's completely agenda driven. I think Bale is 100% right to respond to that. I thought the statement was bang on. Whatever you want to think about him, what he said on Twitter, on social media was correct. I just want to preface that it almost makes me feel sick to my stomach that I'm contributing to this. We're all contributing to this. Bale and himself, unintentionally, or maybe he knows this is a byproduct of what he's about to say, but he knows he has to do it anyway. We're all contributing to this, and Marca is secretly fist pumping about all this attention because that article was behind a paywall. So the amount of people who are now going to go, who haven't seen the article yet, who are now going to go and look up this article, and even if a small percentage of people pay to see it, and even if people who don't pay to see it, just the amount of exposure they got from this, you have no idea how the industry works if you don't think they're happy about being put on blast. There's nothing in them that looks at that Bale statement and starts panicking and putting their hands in the air and sweating out their, our reputation. Oh no, how dare you say this? They don't give a fuck. I promise you that. In fact, they're celebrating it. They got what they wanted. They got the exposure. This is the old mantra of there's no such thing as bad advertising. For publications like that, they don't really care about that stuff. They just get their hits, and you can if you want, you can go and see, pretty much immediately after Bale's tweet, they went out and they put it on their website. They said the headline was Bale responds to criticism. They posted the statement and just left their opinion out of it. They just posted on the website. And it's, they're not going to pass up on news like that. They're just going to post it anyway. But, they just are completely unbothered by it, I'm sure. Now, this goes back to a deeper thing. I'm about to branch off into some tangents here. Bear with me or log off. Really doesn't matter to me, to be honest. But I need to voice this because as a Real Madrid journalist who runs the biggest English publication for this club, and when I say that, it's not necessarily a gloat. Understand that compared to the Spanish side of things, we're a very small fish. So while we're big in English, we're really striving every day. We're relentless about growing this thing. Over the years, we've established a really good relationship with the club. We've gone to every single home game for the past, 3 years now, I think. Obviously the pandemic being an exception. But going back to 2018, I believe we've been at every single home game. We've been to some away games. We've been traveling with the team in preseason. We have a really good relationship with the club. We are friends when we see them in the stadium. We chat. We chat. We say hello. It's a very friendly relationship. We have good terms with their PR. Lucas Navarrete has inside sources with the club. I'm pretty good friends now with someone who's directly on the board. We have a great relationship with them. We are also, at the same time, frustrated with the way some of these things are run. Bale put Marca on blast, and he was, he's obviously never going to give them an interview. If you thought he was never going to talk to the media now, well, forget it. Forget about it now. Like, it's over. If any interview he will do will be a publication, probably with not somebody in Spain. He actually did the one interview he did recently was actually with a golf channel. That's what he's going to do. He's going to do stuff like that. And that's his prerogative. He has no obligation to serve anybody. Good for him. But the club, knowing how these publications work, spoon feed these guys the sources of a lot of the inside info. And, we ask questions, during press conferences and all this stuff, and we usually end up asking the away coach questions because Real Madrid have a list of 4 or 5 people who are allowed to ask questions at the press conferences. No matter how much we get on their good side, it's been frustrating. And the reason I'm bringing this up, and I warned you about this tangent, is because I feel like one of the things that Real Madrid is extremely behind in is that they're not looking for a club, by the way, so progressive in marketing and expanding their brand. They have not realized yet how to connect with global media markets. They've limited to the Spanish audience, which is internally big, but on a global scale, most of Real Madrid's fans are actually outside the country, and we've been trying to send this message to there are plenty of young, not only young, forget about young, the age doesn't matter. There are plenty of really, really good publications covering this team, whether it's us or others, who are actually analyzing the football. I'm not talking about the drama. I'm not talking about calling players parasites. I'm not talking about being the guy who asks Zidane a question every single game. Where's James? Where's Bale? I'm talking about publications who are actually covering the football. I always go back to this. It was if any of you guys follow basketball, during that whole thing when the Warriors had that scuffle with Kevin Durant and Draymond Green on the bench, and all the media was just asking about that every day, and Durant was like, "Don't you guys want to talk about basketball?" There's no line in any press conference ever that hit me the way that did. I just want to talk about football. And I've been lucky enough to ask questions of Pep Guardiola about tactics and Tuchel about tactics and a bunch of away coaches who are on a smaller level, like somebody like Arrasate at Cadiz, Unai Emery at Villarreal, and the list goes on. Lopetegui at Sevilla. And all these guys, their faces just light up to answer a question about tactics. And all of those teams are progressive enough to know that they can actually provide value from their club and market football to the intellectuals by allowing these publications to ask questions, whereas Real Madrid have not yet been able to figure this out. They stick to 5 publications, no matter how much those 5 publications, by the way, drop their standard of journalism. Real Madrid will continue to spoon feed these guys. And this has been something that we've been trying to change. I hope it changes in my lifetime. The reason I'm actually posting this clip, as it may even do damage, in addition to raising awareness, to be honest. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because I want 5-10 years to look back on this, and people to look back on this clip and be like, wow, they finally were able to make a dent, or they can come back and say, wow, Keon was talking about this 10 years ago and it still hasn't changed. We're trying our best. I feel like we've been able to do some things just by growing, and working with the club, but there are some things that they really need to expand their market on, and they need to realize that Real Madrid is a universal thing, and it's outside of Spain as well as inside of Spain, and they need to also let the global audience partake in covering this team and doing it in a way that is conducive to marketing the team and also talking about the football. You know, the club itself doesn't like all that drama. You think they like waking up to all these things? They hate that. But at the same time, they're not realizing how counterintuitive it is to only work with these publications, especially these publications that are really just not doing them any favors. So there's that. I just want to. There's also another tangent I want to go on, but that's one thing that I wanted to say is that, there's also it's widely known now that Real Madrid have also withheld some stuff from Chiringuito now, and Chiringuito, as soon as they lose a little bit of inside info, they just lose their shit and they start attacking Real Madrid. You've seen in the last few episodes, by the way. It's not like I'm a religious watcher, but that's just how the industry works. It needs to change. Long story short, I'm really glad Gareth Bale called them out, and what my hope is that this could be a portal for other players to do the same. So that aside, I want to talk about Gareth Bale again. The people who are piling on top of him for doing well with Wales, I get the frustration. I get it. I'm a Real Madrid fan, just like you. And I know that there's many Barca fans listening to this. As I said, I just kind of stopped because I was like, oh, there's a lot of Barca fans listening to this podcast. But I get the frustration. I get it. You know, I would love for Gareth Bale to just be kissing the Real Madrid badge all day, every day. He goes to sleep with the Real Madrid jersey on. He cuddles with a big Real Madrid teddy bear. He wakes up, he brushes his teeth with a Real Madrid toothbrush, and he does a pilgrimage to Valdebebas. He kisses the pitch. He trains wholeheartedly, puts his heart and soul into it. Of course I want that. At the same time, not every footballer is a fan. This is a job for him. He loves the Welsh national team more. Fine. There's also an argument that, like, why couldn't he have had that dedication to be ready for the Clásico the way he did with Wales? I get it. It's frustrating. I asked the same thing. But this attack on him is ridiculous. And there's a section of the fan base who strongly believe that Bale is not a legend. And look, I'm writing a book about Real Madrid's history. Like, I understand, like, it's not like there are so many different tiers of players and legends that to say legend, it really depends on what your definition is. There's a pantheon, there's a Mount Rushmore of 4 players. There's 2 players actually who just sit on a throne on their own in Real Madrid history. They are unparalleled. Then there's a Mount Rushmore. Then there's like a room of royalty. Then there's a group of legends outside of that. If you consider Ronaldo Nazario a Real Madrid legend as a player, if you consider Luis Figo as a Real Madrid legend as a player, if you consider Zinedine Zidane as a Real Madrid legend as a player, if you consider let me think. If you consider Emilio Butragueño as a legend, as a player, if you consider Santillana, if you consider Raymond Kopa, if you consider Roberto Carlos, if you consider, I don't know, even players like Pepe, like Morientes, Laudrup, Michel, Santa Maria, Varane. Let's say if you want to include him. If you consider players like Juanito. If you consider any of those players, you have to consider Gareth Bale as well. You have to have him in there, and I would actually argue Bale might be higher than any of those players, including Zinedine Zidane, whose overall arching legacy as a Real Madrid player is that of a figure which includes his managerial ability. The stats speak for themselves. Bale's numbers are better than anyone on that list. The trophy count is better than anyone on that list. Although I could be remembering it fuzzy. Like, you know, if I included Varane in there, I guess. So not everyone, but you get my point. Then the argument becomes like, okay, well, it's not about his footballing ability. It's because of his character. If you consider Juanito a legend, and I know most people do, even the ones who don't even know anything about him, by the way, they chant his name in the stadium every 7th minute. If you consider his character worthy as a Real Madrid legend, then Bale fits too. And Bale never hurt anyone. He was never a psychopath like Juanito either, with all due respect. We're basically just holding him to this standard because one, A, his price tag, and B, the fact that he didn't really love the club that much. C, because we hated the fact that he played golf when he was injured, when in reality it didn't really matter what he did in his spare time. It didn't matter if he was playing Fortnite like Dembele till 5 a.m, or if he was at a nightclub, or if he was playing golf. Actually, out of those three, you tell me what's probably the healthiest lifestyle. I know the answer to it. So we just came up with ways. And by the way, this Wales Golf Madrid thing that blew up way out of proportion. I was at the game, press row, the game after that whole thing. We were doing a podcast. I think it was Real Sociedad, and I have been to the Bernabeu for many a goal. I have had my ears blasted out of my brain for some of the biggest goals in recent Real Madrid history. Nothing was as loud as the boos that Bale suffered that day. And I remember just sitting there and thinking, this is insanity. The flag thing, Giggs himself came out, because Giggs was the coach at the time. He said that Bale didn't even know anything about it. He knew about the whole Wales Golf Madrid thing in the sense that they were actually chanting it during the game from the bench, and he had heard it, but that flag was just brought in front of him, and he's celebrating a huge win, and all of a sudden, people are taking pictures of the flag. He just thinks it's a Wales flag. All of a sudden, he becomes a villain. Now, what people wanted from him was to come out and clarify that you don't care, clarify that you didn't know, make an apology and stuff. The problem is that, and if you want, you can hold this against them. I don't personally. I don't give a shit. I honestly don't get my feathers ruffled like many people do. I don't get angry about silly things. To me, this is a silly thing. I actually find it a little bit amusing, but also frustrating that people get upset about the most littlest of things that are inconsequential. But people can maybe hold that against him, that he didn't care to clarify. Bale has always been an introvert. By the way, coming from somebody who has been actually rejected by Bale firsthand, I was in the mix zone with him, and I said, Gareth, can I have a second of your time? And he looked at me, and he just said no, and he walked away. And I didn't take it personally. I didn't care. So don't tell me I can't really be in a position to even talk about it. I can. That stuff just doesn't bother me. I don't know why it bothers people. The reality with Gareth Bale is he is just an extremely introverted person. It has nothing to do with English or Spanish, and he does speak Spanish, by the way. He doesn't give interviews. He doesn't talk to the press. And to me, he just did inherently nothing wrong. I think he could have been more dedicated or worked harder or whatever, but you can't tell me that he wasn't good enough to play for Real Madrid. This is a conversation that we're about to circle back to. Now, I don't think he should be a starter by any means. I actually have, I thought he looked good at the beginning of the season. When he first played, he looked good against Villarreal later, and then but the last couple years, and he looked good against Tottenham last year too, playing in a limited role as a striker and scoring goals against like poor Europa League teams, or was it Conference League? I don't remember. I think it was Europa League. And but like if you go rewind it to a year before that, there was a lot of problem with his verticality or lack of verticality when playing football. He was more passive. He was scared to go into challenges. So I'm not saying he should have been a starter. And to be quite honest with you, actually, I'm going to save it. There's a question about this. Let me save it. But I need to get some of that stuff off my chest. It was very tangential. I'm very sorry, but I needed to get that off my chest. And we're going to come back to this in a second. So